Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you very much for joining us today at the morning, good afternoon. Oops, sorry, there is a echo. Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us at the very important day today, the World Water Day, 22nd of March. And we would like to really extend a warm welcome to all of us who are joining here at the webinar. Friends, my name is Dinesh Suna, and I'm the coordinator of the Ecumenical Water Network of the World Council of Churches here in Geneva. Just to let you know, even though you may be familiar, World Council of Churches is a global fellowship of 350 Protestant and Orthodox churches, and we are present from about 110 countries around the world, and about 500 million Christians who are affiliated to these 350 member churches of World Council of Churches from around the world. Ecumenical Water Network is an initiative of the World Council of Churches, started in 2006, committed to the issues of water justice from a rights and justice perspective. I am also currently one of the co-chairs of the PAD, Partnership of Religion and Development, another faith and development organization, and we have also members from that group present here among the speakers. So without further ado, let me also give a little introduction to today's event. We have very distinguished panel of speakers from around the world, and as the numbers are growing, we have currently about 40 participants, but we have had over 110 registrations from different parts of the world, from different faiths. Representatives are those who have registered for the event here. So thank you very much. So as on 22nd of March, the World Water Day is being celebrated around the world. We all know about the theme for this year, which is valuing water, and which is very, very important to us, at least those who are around today from the faith community representatives, because water means differently to different people. But unfortunately, today is a market-driven trend, the economic value of water, which supersedes the other values that we, you and I attribute to, that is the spiritual and ethical values of water. So as a church and the faith-based organizations, it is our moral imperative to ensure that water for life gets priority over water for profit. We are not saying that water should not be used for any other industrial purposes or economic purposes, but water for life must be given the required priority. So recently, the water was listed on the Wall Streets for the future water markets as a tradable commodity like oil and gold. And those who have the money can buy the water and control its availability, access, and tariff. And this can definitely jeopardize the human right to water from the poor, for the poor and marginalized or vulnerable communities around the world. So to explore this issue a little more deeper, the Ecumenical Water Network of World Council of Churches, along with the United Nations Special Rapporteur for Human Right to Water, Professor Pedro Arrojo-Agudo, we have come forward organizing this event, and we are so grateful that prominent speakers from different faith representatives are here today. Unfortunately, Professor Pedro, the Special Rapporteur, cannot join us today because, as expected, being the World Water Day, he is on a series of events around water, but therefore we will be able to hear to a pre-recorded message from him in due course of time. The questions that we will be dealing with would be that how we as faith community can attribute, how can we attribute price to a priceless resource such as water, the spiritual and ethical arguments to prevent such a move, such as listing it as a tradable commodity on Wall Street. How can we prioritize water uses that sustains life over commercial use of water for profit? And how can faith-based organizations help protect water from the speculative future markets? So these will be the questions that we'll be dealing with, but from various faith perspectives. But before that, let me then try to, we can watch a pre-recorded video message, which was exclusively recorded and handed it over to us by the Special Rapporteur, Pedro. So I would request our communication colleagues to kindly go ahead and play that video for us. Thank you very much.
Dear friends, this March 22nd, we celebrate, as we do every year, World Water Day. This year's theme is valuing water. The slogan is Water to Me. And the guiding question is, what does water mean to you? For me, water is first and foremost the blue soul of life. For these reasons, I think since ancient times, all beliefs and religions have considered water as an essential reference of creation, giving it a sacred value in rites, liturgies, and celebrations. In many ancient worldviews, even rivers, lakes, and springs also have a sacred value as sources of life and purification. In fact, we could say that this vast network of rivers, lakes, and wetlands constitute the arteries and veins that vertebrate life on islands and continents. However, through ignorance, irresponsibility, and often greed, we pollute and destroy these rivers, lakes, and wetlands on which life in general, and in particular the health of our own communities and societies depend. In fact, water being the key factor of life, today we have transformed it into the most terrible vector of disease and death ever known to mankind. Although drinking water and sanitation have been declared human rights by the United Nations, it is estimated that 2.2 billion people do not have guaranteed access to safe drinking water, and almost 4.5 billion do not have access to decent sanitation services. And as a result, an estimated 2 million people die each year, most of them children under the age of 5, not to mention the millions of people who are gradually being poisoned by heavy metals, pesticides, and other toxins that are increasingly polluting our rivers, lakes, and aquifers. This irresponsibility and greed are often justified by visions that consider water as a mere commodity, promoting its management based on the logic of the market, which encourages the abusive and unsustainable use of water, the violation of human rights, and the marginalization of the most vulnerable and impoverished people. In the context of this World Water Day, and following the call of the United Nations, I propose to reflect on the ethical principles that should govern water management. From my point of view, unlike other natural resources such as wood, for example, what is important about water is not properly its materiality, H2O, but its multiplicity of functions and the diversity of values at stake, located in very different ethical ranges. How can we compare, for example, the value of the water needed for that vital and essential minimum necessary for a dignified life as a human right with the value of the water needed to fill a swimming pool? That is why I propose to distinguish water for life linked to the space of human rights, water in activities and services of public interest, water for economic development, and even water as a crime in illegitimate activities. In all cases, we are talking about water. but at very different ethical levels and management criteria that must be governed, from my point of view, by the priority of water for life. Finally, within the framework of this global call by the United Nations, I would like to propose that you initiate a joint interreligious reflection on the profound ethical value that different religious beliefs and visions attach to water. A reflection that we can all do together on a specific day, accompanied by the celebrations that are considered appropriate with the rites that from the different faiths and traditions express the value of water as the blue soul of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that was beautifully put, water being the blue soul of our planet Earth. I don't think we can put it any better. And friends, we probably already, we have known Professor Pedro Arroyo, the new special rapporteur. We call him new, even though he was appointed already from 1st of November last year. But those who do not know him, maybe a little intro of him would be appropriate here, even though he has spoken already. He succeeded Professor Leo Heller, the former Special Rapporteur for Water and Sanitation at the United Nations from 1st of November last year. And Professor Pedro has been also as an elected member of parliament from the Spanish parliament. He has received a prestigious Goldman Environmental Prize for his contributions to conservation of water ecosystems. He is an extensively read, and he has published extensively, more than 100 articles in about 70 books. So quite a learned person. He also speaks different languages along with English, even Spanish, French, and Portuguese. The video that we saw, he has given it to our request because he couldn't be here. And the video is also available in French and Spanish. So if you are interested, we can share the link with you. Well, friends, now quickly to introduce very briefly who all speakers are here, even though we will be in a minute giving a little detailed introduction of each of them, but we would like to acknowledge the presence of all other distinguished panelists. We have heard from the Professor Pedro through a recorded message. We have the pleasure to introduce briefly Bishop Arnold Temple, the chairman of the WCC Ecumenical Water Network. Bishop, if you could just say hello and wave. You're muted, of course. Yeah. Then we have to, along with Bishop Temple, we also have Reverend Dr. Rachel Mash, the environmental coordinator of the Anglican Church of South Africa. Could you just wave?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, Rachel. We have Kiran Bali, the chair of the United Religions Initiative Global Council of Trustees from UK. Could you say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. We have Sadhvi Bhagavati Saraswati, renowned spiritual leader from India. We will get to know more about her in a minute. Could you say hello? There you go.
Namaste, wonderful to be here.
Thank you very much. We have Dr. Husna Ahmed, the CEO of Global One 2015. We will also get to know more details about her soon.
Assalamu alaikum.
To give us the Muslim perspective on water. And then to wrap it up, we have the Jewish perspective will be brought to us by Rabbi Abraham Sotendorp from the Netherlands. We will also get to know more about you, sir, in a minute. Okay,
Hello, Malek.
I believe I have acknowledged all the speakers. Okay, now friends, this is the format here, that we will listen to the various perspectives, the Christian perspective, the Hindu perspective, the Muslim perspective, and the Jewish perspective on valuing water. And we will be listening to various good practices, various reference to the scriptures from their respective religions, and emphasize the spiritual and ethical values of water, which also is underlined by Professor Agudo, very importantly, how important it is that water for life must get the priority. So friends, without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker, Bishop Arnold Temple, who is the chairman of the World Council of Churches Ecumenical Water Network. He is also the president of All Africa Conference of Churches, which is the regional wing of the World Council of Churches. Bishop Temple is the Bishop Emeritus from the Methodist Church in Sierra Leone in Africa. And Bishop Temple also represents at the highest decision-making body of the World Council of Churches, the Central Committee of the WCC. He has attended and spoken in several global water platforms, including the World Water Week in Stockholm, representing the Faith for Water segments. So over to you, Bishop Temple.
Thank you very much, Dinesh, and thanks everybody. Let me take this opportunity of welcoming you as we celebrate this World Water Day together. The theme for this year's celebration is valuing water. The value of water cannot be measured entirely in monetary or economic terms. Water indeed is life. We've been saying that. We cannot stop saying it. And this is not merely a slogan, it is a reality. Every human being is in need of water for survival. Thus, if people are denied of adequate supply of water, they are denied of life. Water is indispensable for human dignity. Provision of water is not a privilege offered to people, but the right of the people. The provision of safe and affordable water is a human right recognized in international law through human rights treaties and declarations that our various governments subscribed to. It is therefore incumbent on all governments to see to it that clean, safe, accessible, and affordable water is made available for personal and domestic use of the people, the very people that it governs. For any government to negate that responsibility is to violate the God-given right of God's people. The Ecumenical Water Network of the World Council of Churches is committed to advocate for that right. The continent of Africa is faced with many challenges relating to the provision of clean and affordable water. I am from Sierra Leone in the continent of Africa. The churches in Sierra Leone, for instance, have expressed strong concern on the inadequate supply of pipe-borne water to the cities, towns, and villages. People have to walk for miles to fetch water, and in the rationing programs, some communities are supplied late at night and in the very early hours of the morning. Children who should be studying, who should be having adequate sleep in preparation for school, are out in the streets fetching water and are sometimes open to attacks, sexual molestation, and even rape. We are also concerned with the level of commercialization of water by entrepreneurs whose sole aim is to make profit. It is because the states are failing to provide clean, safe, and affordable water to its citizens. That's why we have unscrupulous business people who capitalize on the vulnerability of our people to fill the gaps created. Plastic water sachets are unacceptable as the plastic contaminates our streams and rivers and even the oceans, killing the stock of fishes. Some countries have banned the use of non-renewable plastics, and as such, water sachet is a prohibited item. We call on those who have not done so to ban non-renewable plastics that are very difficult to dispose of and has dire environmental consequences and impact for now and the future. We are also greatly concerned with the present pollution of rivers. The river Taye in southern Sierra Leone is a typical example. The Council of Churches in Sierra Leone were appalled by the level of pollution, fishing and sand mining for many. It no longer serves that purpose as a result of pollution. Fishes are infected and dying and floating on the river, and sand deteriorates in quality. Women who planted vegetables on the river banks can no longer do so. The river has all gone brown in color and the water level gone low. In addition to being the source of livelihood, it used to provide recreation for villagers. Now they can no longer swim on the river. The pollution is believed to be as a result of excessive gold mining activities on the northern source of the river. The pollution is having a dire and hazardous effect on the populace of the towns and villages through which the river runs. The churches in Sierra Leone, through the Council of Churches, have used the World Water Day to call on for urgent action by the government to stop the pollution of our rivers, River Taye in particular, and save the lives of our citizens. The protection of our citizens is a right and not a favor. As church, we believe that this is not what God wills for his people. To the contrary, God says in scripture, Ezekiel chapter 47, verses 9 to 12, and I read, "Swarms of living creatures will live wherever the river flows, and there will be very many fish. Once these waters reach there, it will become fresh, and everything will live where the river goes. Fishermen will stand fishing beside the sea. It will be a place for the spreading of nets. Its fish will be of great many kinds, like the fish of the great seas. But its swamps and marshes will not become fresh. They are to be left for salt. On the banks, on both sides of the river, there will grow all kinds of trees and food. Their leaves will not wither, nor their fruits fail, but they will bear fresh fruit every month, because the water for them flows from the sanctuary. Their fruit will be for food, and their leaves for healing. Thus saith the Lord." Ezekiel chapter 47, 9 to 12. God bless us as we celebrate this World Water Day together. May our nations and all our resources flourish. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bishop Arnold Temple. I think that was a very good note you have started us off, besides introducing the commitments of Ecumenical Water Network and its modus operandi. You have not only pointed out towards the commercialization of water, even in your own country in Sierra Leone in Africa, but you ended up in a very interesting note that water, the right to water, is not only for humans, it is also for the fishes and the other aquatic creatures. And we, from our anthropocentric approach of creation, shouldn't be polluting the rivers and making these lives unstable. Thank you very much, Bishop Temple. And I understand you are holding a press conference today for the World Water Day. At any time, feel free to stay with us as long as you can, so that you can take up some questions and respond to them as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bishop. Friends, to continue the Christian perspective on the discussion today, valuing water, I would invite now Reverend Dr. Rachel Maas, who, as I said, is the environmental coordinator of the Anglican Church of Southern Africa, which also covers the South Africa, Swaziland, Lesotho, Angola, Namibia, and Mozambique. She lives in Cape Town. From an environmental desk, her work has now grown as and popularly known as the Green Anglicans. You can Google it and you'll find enough resources that they produce. She also is a member of the steering committee of the Anglican Communion Environmental Network and the steering committee of the Season for Creation. So over to you, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Dinesh, and a happy World Water Day to everybody that is joining us this afternoon. And I'm glad to see that we have humans and also cats on our Zoom call this afternoon. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to share my screen and begin a short PowerPoint. Can you just indicate if you can see it? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So what is the spiritual and ethical value of water? I'm going to be speaking particularly from the Anglican perspective, but it's broader than that, it's generally Christian. We prepared some materials for today and for yesterday for the World Water Day services, and I'd like to start with a prayer that we had in our service. Spirit of living water, you hold all of creation in your womb and spring us forward onto the earth at birth. Spirit of tides, remind me of the rise and fall of your rhythms, so that I may discover them deep within my own being. Spirit of greenness, bring moistness and vigor to my life, so that I might savor the experience of your energy moving through me out into the world. Blessings of water be upon me. May I be carried by the flow of the great river of life. May I discover a hidden spring within, gushing forth. May I be carried to the shores of the sacred and renewed. Amen. I want to start with a quote from Archbishop Tabo, who says, "What does development mean if we destroy the water and destroy the food? We cannot choose a development that will destroy the future of our water and our food." So in discovering the value of water, we had a Twitter chat this week, and I want to share with you some of the insights from the young people. So first of all, we go to Malawi, and Charles from Bakolo said, "We pay exorbitant prices to get safe water from water supplying institutions. My current bills are 3 times my family size. It's sad." So we said, this is a water injustice. What happens to those who have no money? They must close the taps and they resort to drinking unsafe water. And then 2 young women from South Africa had a conversation, and Matale Pule said, "For me, water is life. It cleanses, it nourishes, and it heals." And Mandisa Gumada replied, "As a person who comes from the village, it's often not easy to see water in that light. due to the fact that it is always polluted and scarce. She says the value of water is much appreciated by those who carry it on their heads, those without tanks and clean water. And then she went on to say that in her context, a lot of rural and unemployed people have been depending on brought from water from the river. But now that they are building dams, they're losing their water and they're getting no supply from the dams. So they have lost access to the rivers. The dams have been built, helping to supply the commercial interests, and they have no access to that water. And from Botswana, we heard, it's like in Botswana, when they are intent on chasing the San people from their sacred lands, they cement the boreholes and wells and refuse people access to the rivers. It is a method of collusion, using water as the weapon. So a few different experiences from different countries. What then is the role of faith communities? I believe we need to start with spirituality. From there, we move to local actions and then to advocacy. Water is both life and it is sacred. In our spirituality, we need to be preaching about water. There are actually 722 verses in the Bible that speak about water, but one very rarely even hears a sermon about water. And as Christians, we were baptized into the family of God through water. So water is our sacred element. And yet we can't even imagine baptizing a baby with water taken from our local river because it is so polluted. So we must be committed to protecting our sacred element. This is a picture of a water justice conference that we had in Cape Town during the drought. And this wonderful choir was singing about the value of water. Save the water, they sang. And I wish we had time for you to hear a clip. It was a wonderful choir. We prepare materials for Sunday school because we believe that children need to start from very young the importance of water, that water is God-given. We have to save it. We have to protect it. We have to stop it from becoming polluted. And every Lent, we have a Lenten fast when we look at how we must care for the planet, a fast for the planet. And here are some of the ideas that came up about water, that one of those 40 days of Lent, you should research and pray for a community without access to clean water. On another day, you must think before you drink. Let us stop using plastic bottled water or plastic water. We cannot just stay in our buildings, in our churches and our mosques and our synagogues and pray about water. We must be out in the streets where our water is being destroyed by fracking. It is being destroyed by pollution. It is being destroyed by factories. But what we see from this picture is that water and sanitation are two sides of the same problem. People need access to clean water, but they also need access to safe sanitation. So what kind of actions can we as a faith community take? Here's a picture of one of the churches in Cape Town that had an eco fair where they shared a lot of different ideas. How do you save water? What are all the water saving ideas that we can come across? It was a wonderful fair. This is a church in northern Mozambique in Nyasa, and when they built their new church, they put in a water pump right at the door of the church so that everyone coming to church could go home with fresh, clean water. This is a distribution of water purifications in the Beira area just after the cyclone Idai, so that people could have safe water as the water was being polluted. This is a water tank being blessed in St. John's in Durban in north of South Africa. This is the river cleanup, and this river cleanup started actually 2 years ago after World Water Day. And the scripture that was shared that day was how the river of God, the river of life flows from the throne of God. And that church said there's this very ugly canal, which is full of litter. How can we renew it so that the river of life can flow again? And they started regular river cleanups and then realized that actually the litter was just still going down to sea. And so they put in this litter boom to stop the litter, so it's easier now to collect it. Today we launched on World Water Day a new program which is called the Water Disciples Program here in Cape Town. It's in partnership with WWF. We had a very bad drought in Cape Town, as many of you know. And what happened is that people began to tap into the groundwater supplies. Many people put in boreholes. And so this project is to empower and train faith communities around the importance of our groundwater and how we can protect groundwater. So today we launched with our 12 water disciples, the water discipleship program. So moving from our spirituality, we then moved to local actions, and then we moved to advocacy. We need to stop polluting. It's not enough just to do pickups. We need to stop the rivers being polluted in the first place. We need to be planting trees. We need to be cleaning our rivers. We need to be stopping wasting water. I want to share two advocacy issues. In Cape Town, we had a big problem with lack of access to safe sanitation in one of our townships, and nobody was doing anything. People complained, people had marches, people toy-toyed, and then Archbishop Thabo called together a group of interfaith leaders, and they went to visit the affected areas. The press were there, everybody was watching, and it made things move. They actually sorted out some of the toilet problems. And Archbishop Thabo is very proud. He always calls himself the toilet archbishop because he was proud that he did something to make a difference in terms of sanitation for that community. And we are facing a very big problem in our province at the moment. In northern Namibia, a Canadian oil company called Recon Africa has already started exploratory drilling in northern Namibia and Botswana. Now, it is a very sensitive ecosystem area there. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Okavango Delta. We cannot destroy God's ecosystems for the sake of greed and oil, especially at this time. We do not need more oil. They say the oil must stay in the soil. And we know that fracking causes a tremendous amount of water to be used. There also is the danger that fracking will pollute the aquifers and the groundwater, and that polluted groundwater will soak down into the Okavango. This is also an indigenous area. So we as a faith community have taken up this challenge of advocacy to protect the Okavango Basin. So what we did is the Bishop of Namibia brought the issue to the other bishops. They wrote a petition, and about 2 weeks ago, we handed the petition to the Consul of Namibia. At the same time, we contacted our brothers and sisters in Canada, and the petition was signed off by the Archbishop of Canada. We've got an interfaith group in Canada called Kairos Canada, and they have started a petition on that site, which is going to the Canadian government, that the ombudsperson should investigate what is happening in northern Namibia. And our dream and our vision, and we implore that the rest of the faith community around the world, please come on board to protect northern Namibia. Recon Africa is saying that this is one of the largest oil fields. It could be as large as Texas. We don't know if that's true, or they're just saying that for their share prices. But Namibia is an extremely water scarce area. They cannot afford to have their water polluted by fracking. So we plead with the global community to come on board and to help us to stop the drilling in the Okavango. As faith communities,
Rachel,
this is my last slide. If we bring together the two issues of water is sacred and a commitment to justice, then we can begin to make a difference in this world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was very informative. And I really loved the way you had the flow, attributing the spiritual significance to water, to promoting local actions, and then go on to advocate for change. I think that's something, a unique way that the faith communities can engage. And I also like the way you participated, because we all know UN Water invited everybody to say something like, what does water mean to you? Like, water to me hashtag was used, and I was very happy to see you involve these young peoples to discuss about this. And also the new project that you just have initiated with the WWF on water discipleship. I wish you well, and we look forward to more as you just launched it today. Thank you very much, and hopefully there will be some questions coming up. Friends, now thanking Rachel, we would move on to the next. After listening to these two speakers from the Christian perspective, we would move on to listen to the Hindu perspective. We also have two speakers with us. I hope we'll be able to manage the time. My comms colleagues are telling me we are about 12 minutes behind the schedule. That's still okay. We target for about 7 minutes each. First, Sadhvi Bhagavati Saraswati ji, who is a renowned female spiritual leader from India. She is also the Secretary General of Global Interfaith Wash Alliance. Additionally, she also serves as the Vice Chair of the United Nations Advisory Council on Religion. And she's also on the steering committee of the International Partnership of Religion and Development, in short, the PARD, that I just mentioned. She's also part of the World Bank's moral imperative to end extreme poverty. Sadhviji lives in the beautiful Rishikesh in the Paramath Niketan in India. Over to you, Sadhviji.
Thank you so much, Dineshji, and to all of our esteemed and beautiful panelists. It's such a joy to be with you today. As has been said so many times, but bears repeating over and over again, water is life. Not only is it that which makes up our body, but it is that which connects us to the world. With every inhalation and exhalation, we're not only inhaling and exhaling oxygen and carbon dioxide, but water also. It is that which we are exchanging with the world. And those of us who weren't scientifically inclined to know that before, COVID has taught us. Because if we weren't inhaling and exhaling also drops of water, we wouldn't all have to be wearing masks. So water is who we are. It's what we exchange with the universe. It's that which runs beneath all of our cities and towns and villages, into the rivers that nourish us, nurture us, that run into the oceans that connect us across every country and continent. So water is really life. In the Hindu tradition, water is worshipped as divine. We say Jal Devta, literally the god of water, you could say, but more correctly, it's actually the divine presence in water, that divinity that water is. Here in Rishikesh, we live on the banks of the sacred Mother Ganga. And the river we live upon is worshipped as sacred, for she gives life to almost a third of India. But she is seen as the mother goddess. So we're not looking just at molecules of H2O, but actually as divinity incarnate. And to me, what's so beautiful about that is because water is life and gives life and sustains life, regardless of whether we actually see a river as a mother goddess or not, as long as we understand that life itself is sacred and holy, then that which gives us life and sustains life by its nature is sacred and holy. And it can never be a commodity. You cannot buy and sell life. This is why all over the world, there are all kinds of rules, not just legal rules, but moral rules against slavery, against trafficking of children, because we understand inherently that life cannot be bought and sold. That if we are deemed worthy of our days and our nights by the Creator, whatever name or form we may use, surely we are worthy of whatever we need in order to sustain that life, and to come in and to commodify and privatize life is to actually defy and deny the workings of the divine who has granted us life. So on every level, that is a tragic mistake. And it's not just a mistake for those who will not have access to it, but what we have seen as the commodification and the consumerism has come into so much of our natural resources. We've seen it with mountains, we've seen it with trees, we've seen it with forests being cut down in the name of development, whether it's shopping centers, whether it's freeways, whether it's condominiums, whether it's timber, whether it's animal agriculture. But we've seen what happens when nature, that which we need in order to survive as our life, and that life which is inextricably woven into our life, becomes commodified. Not only do the humans suffer, lack of water, lack of clean air, climate change, but nature itself suffers. The moment something becomes a commodity, it becomes something to be used and abused and discarded. It becomes something that is here for us, rather than something which was created by the same creator to coexist with us. And so commodifying nature is commodifying life, which of course goes against all of our spiritual and ethical concepts. To commodify water, to privatize water in such a way that those who don't have the resources will not get it, or in such a way that those who own it get to determine who's worthy and who's not, is perhaps the most lethal form of discrimination other than direct genocide. It will lead to tragic and fatal consequences on the basis of whether it's race, whether it's religion, whether it's color, whether it's socioeconomic status, whether it's where they live. This is what we consider discrimination. And it's beyond tragic, it's beyond fatal. It truly takes discrimination to a whole new level, and one that we need to avoid at all costs. Our time is running very short. I notice I will, in just 1 minute, very quickly summarize what our Global Interfaith WASH Alliance is doing by bringing together the different religions in the name of water, in the name of sanitation, in the name of hygiene, to truly work on what we call the grand level, which are the major stages, the major events, the major programs to change how people think, and therefore how they behave, the choices they make. But also on the ground level, actually building toilets, providing clean water, bringing in water education in schools, running World Toilet College, training communities, bringing in women to be WASH ambassadors. It is an organization, and our beloved Rabbi Sotendorp is also a co-founder. Our Kieran, Husna were so crucial as our JIWA was founded. So much of this panel is actually part of JIWA. It was founded under the premise that our definition of peace must expand, and it must expand to include ensuring that all of our sisters and brothers have access to safe and sufficient water. So from working with the government on every level, to bringing in new technologies to clean and purify water, to changing how people think about open defecation, about water, about menstrual hygiene, about all of the aspects, pollution, that have been spoken about so clearly. This is what we are rooted and founded upon. And these are the messages, whether it's pollution, whether it's plastic, whether it's open defecation, whatever it may be, that we are working with. And lastly, just to emphasize the importance of tree plantation, because we know that the water that we do have, the vast majority of it comes not from glaciers, but from springs, from the mountains and the trees. And so we are very active in massive tree plantation programs, and especially those that bring different religions together to plant trees together. So we're planting actual trees and we're planting seeds of peace and of oneness and togetherness. There's so much more to share, but I know time is very short, so I will end here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sadhviji. I think I really liked the very notion that since water is life, and therefore privatization or privatizing water is almost like privatizing life itself. I think that speaks volume. And also how Hindu religion attributes not only water as a life-giving resource, but treating water itself as a goddess. As you rightly said, the river Ganges is worshipped as in Hindu religion as a god. And I think the other day we were having a discussion, I don't know if you told about it, but how even in India, river Ganges also has been kind of attributed the status of a human being, and therefore violating the rights of the river is almost like violating the rights of the human being itself, and then you can be tried in the court of law. So thank you very much, and also for highlighting what you've been doing in preserving the springs, which gives rise to all these beautiful big rivers in India through plantation and many other works that you do through Jiva and otherwise. We will have more chance to listen to you through some question answer sessions. Thank you very much, Sadhviji. Okay, friends, now we're running behind the schedule a bit, which happens with so many speakers involved, obviously, but we request you all to kindly keep to time. The next speaker is Kiran Bali, the chair of the United Religions Initiative, Global Council of Trustees in United Kingdom. And Kiran Bali is a prominent spokesperson in various areas of interfaith, on environmental justice, women's empowerment, and peace building. Kiran was honored by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II with the Member of Most Excellent Order of the British Empire accolade in 2008, and she has received a number of international awards for her engagements on these spiritual aspects. So she also has launched tackling climate change through advocacy, through grassroots communities. She launched the Hindu Declaration on Climate Change in India, amidst others. So over to you, Kiranji.
Thank you so much, and happy World Water Day to everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you. I'd like to build a little bit on what Sadhviji said from a Hindu perspective, and then maybe share some examples. And I promise I will be brief. So absolutely, in Hinduism, we've heard the 5 elements of nature. One of those is water, and water has been an object of worship from the time immemorial. It actually represents the non-manifested substratum from which all manifestations arise. And in Hinduism, all manifestations are indeed sacred. We all know that it cleanses, washes away impurities and pollutants. However, the spiritually cleansing powers has given it a central role in a lot of the religious rituals in Hinduism. So there is water involved at every step within Hinduism. Now we have great teachings across all the religions. I think the urgency of the situation with water means that the actions have to speak louder than the words. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how, especially in the Hindu community, We've changed mindsets and practices given the situation with water. Let me share with you a festival, a Ganesha festival, where part of that, a big part of that, is immersing of idols of Lord Ganesh in the water. And many a time, you know, the chemical-based paints used on those were actually creating more problems, creating a bigger inorganic chain, and indeed the aquatic life is also at risk of being destroyed. What we've done is creatively worked through education, through the temples, through the communities to help raise awareness of what that process was actually doing to the water. And now what we have is idols made of recyclable materials, made of cow dung, with plant seeds inside, making them 100% biodegradable and sustainable. There are actually now idols made of saplings in a pot, activated charcoal ones that remove the impurities from the water and then are immersed. So many new ways have been introduced, and soy crayons have been used to color them. These are fish friendly. They look after the water, they look after the fish, and that way we look after everyone, all of creation. Another aspect of this is that we don't need to immerse the idol now in rivers, lakes, or seas. Instead, we can plant them in our garden and have Lord Ganesh bless us throughout the year. So the idols are now made from recycled newspapers and clay with seeds inside. And then when we plant the idol in a pot, within 7 days, we have a beautiful sapling growing. So there's so many ways we can work differently, learning about the issues we have with water, but then using that creatively within our religious practices. In the temples, for example, there is a saying that you dig deeper and there are layers and layers of ancient wisdom and practices. So within the temples, we have these tanks, and they've now been evolved for the good of the whole community. They boast of architectural heritage, but in this age now of urban decay and the loss of natural resources, we see these tanks as the best places for rainwater harvesting. And that's what we're doing at the moment. I'd like to share an example from the interfaith community. There are so many water warriors around the world, and they're working in interfaith cooperation circles. So not just within their own faith community, but joining hands with people from all the faith communities. And the example I'd like to give you is of a cooperation circle in Malawi called the Lunzu Cooperation Circle. The members of this circle are from the Anglican, Roman Catholic churches, Providence Industrial Mission, the Muslims, Seventh-day Adventists, Rastafarians, and some traditional African religions who have come together to really improve the community's social welfare, especially through water. And in this particular case, the Shire is the biggest river in Malawi. It passes through the Chikwawa district on its way to the Zambezi River. It's very flat, so the inhabitants are actually very vulnerable to the rising water, and people die due to the swelling of the giant river, and due to cholera, and due to the unsafe drinking water. So there's a number of issues there. And what this group of interfaith action and interfaith warriors, we can call them, has decided to do is really tackle this head on. The houses have been washed away, the crops are washed away, and many people die. And this is a huge problem. And so what this group has done is taken leadership in helping to provide chlorine to make sure the water is safe for drinking as a start, making sure that the flood victims have access to clean drinking water, access to the resources that require, but using water not just to pose a problem, but to be the solution. So thinking creatively, thinking a little bit outside the box. And I think another example is the Murray River in southern Australia, where water warriors come together. They pray together, but also actually implement actions. And I think that's so important, how we translate from what the scriptures say and how we practice this in day-to-day life and how we make that difference. That's so important. I'd like to just conclude by saying that there's so much that has been said and that we can share. But the sacred water element really teaches us as individuals that we have great strength to transform even the tallest mountain. But we can do that whilst being caring, soft, pliable, and flexible. That's what water is. And I'd like to leave us with a quote that the Mahatma Gandhi says, and that is, "Let us be the change we wish to see. It is only through this change that we will make a difference." I will leave it there, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kiranji, for again adding to what Sadhvi Bhagavati had already had also shared with regards to the Hindu religion, and how water is one of the 5 elements which constitutes life and the creation itself, and how promoting using organic elements even to purify water without any chemicals. These are some of the good practices that you have highlighted, and particularly many a times religions somehow also becomes a stumbling block towards caring for creation. That is not any one religion, but it is applicable to all. But particularly, as you said, in Hindu religion, when after a festival, a idol which is made up of sometimes with chemicals can also be dumped into the water with hundreds and thousands of them, might pollute the water bodies in India. And you have initiated how the culture can be continued, the tradition can be continued, but with a change which will not destroy or harm the water bodies, but would nurture the creation. I think these are some of the very good examples, and we wish to hear from you more. Thank you very much. Yeah. Friends, now it's time we move on, and it's about 1 hour past already. So hopefully we'll get to some question answer time where you all could also speak and contribute. So we have 2 more speakers to go. I have the next to give us the Muslims perspective on valuing water, Dr. Husna Ahmed, the CEO of Global One 2015, a faith-based international NGO focused on women. And Dr. Husna has done her PhD on environmental law from the School of Oriental and African Studies, London University. She's currently the board member of several international organizations. She's also part of the member of the UN Task Force Faith-Based Advisory Council. She sits in the International Advisory Board of Commonwealth Initiative for Freedom of Religion and Belief, the CFOB. And she's the Secretary General of the World Muslim Leadership Forum and coordinator of Alliance of NGOs and CSOs of South-South Cooperation. Quite an accomplished women leader, I would say. Over to you, Husna, to give us the Muslim perspective on water.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all. Good afternoon from London. Dinesh, Sadhviji, Rabbi Sortendorp, Kiran, you know, I'm just absolutely delighted to be on this panel, and I think I've recently been connected with Rachel, Reverend Rachel, so you know, it's an absolute pleasure to be on this panel with all of you. So today we're celebrating World Water Day, and its significance has never meant more to me than now, as we're entering the 2nd year of the global pandemic. Washing hands with clean water seems like such a simple task, but it can mean the difference between life and death. In the past year, I, like so many of you, have lost loved ones to this pandemic. And we have a responsibility both within our own faith communities and in forums such as this one, to continue to advocate, amplify our voices, and remind everyone that we only have one planet. And we have to think of the whole and not the individual. All humanity is important, and everyone deserves dignity and access to clean water. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a wake-up call to all of us to think about others and move away from greed and self-indulgence. So I'm shocked to hear about the idea of making water a commodity. It's indeed an audacious initiative to see how this is being taken seriously by the likes of Wall Street, and how it's being offered up to all of us as a solution from an environmental perspective. What we need to realize is that the faith communities don't need the private sector to teach us about how to conserve water. What we need to do is not be complacent, but remind our communities about our duties as custodians of this beautiful planet. We, as Allah's stewards on earth, have the responsibility of preserving the natural order of earth and maintaining its balance, and must strive to ensure the fair allocation of resources. I've been asked today to speak about the value of water from a Muslim perspective. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ describes water as one of the three wonders of the natural world that everyone is entitled to. Muslims have common share in three things: grass, water, and fire. Abu Dawood, book 23, 3470. Water is an integral part of Islam and has been embedded in Islamic beliefs and customs. The word for water, ma, appears more than 60 times throughout the Quran, as well as other words related to water such as rivers, sea, fountains, spring, rain, hail, clouds, and wind are also frequent. The theme of water in the Quran is explored both symbolically and at a practical level. The term Sharia, Islamic laws, could either mean the watering source or the path that leads to a source of water. Thus, it is a metaphor for divine law, quenching the thirst of knowledge, or a path leading to the source of truth. Water is also a symbol of resurrection, since paradise is always described as a place with rivers flowing and florid vegetation. Muslims acknowledge water as one of the immense mercies of Allah. This gift is the proof of the existence and uniqueness of Allah, stated in the Surah of the Ant. Or who has created the heavens and the earth, and who sends you down water from the sky? Yea, with it we cause to grow well-planted orchards, full of beauty of delight. It is not in your power to cause the growth of the trees in them. Can there be another God beside Allah? Surah Nam 27:60. In Surah Al-Furqan, Allah describes his mercy, and it is he who sends the winds as good tidings before his mercy, and we send down from the sky pure water. Quran 25:48. In addition, another surah states, and you have seen the water that you drink. Is it you who brought it down from the clouds, or is it we who bring it down? If we willed, we could make it bitter. So why are you not grateful? Quran 56:58-70. Another aspect associated with water in the Quran is its purifying power. Several verses focus on the subject of purification and personal cleanliness. And we send water from the sky in fixed measure. Tell them that water is shared, everyone in a certain time. Water conservation is embedded in Islam and is very common to find it in the Quran and Sunnah statements and teachings which define the correct use of water. Religion plays a big influence on society, and water is a big pivotal role within Islam. Awareness campaigns and water conservation programs based on religious principles have proved very useful, beneficial, and cost-effective in different areas of the Muslim world. Similar to what Reverend Rachel was talking about from the Christian perspective, Islam lays down clear instructions on water distribution and condemns wastefulness and prohibits people from defecating or urinating in the proximity of water resources to avoid pollution and contamination. Some basic Islamic norms relating to water management are: every human being has a right to drink water, to quench his thirst, to assure his or her survival. Denying water to someone asking for it is condemned by the Prophet, peace be upon him, as one of the most ignominious acts. Mankind has a priority in the access to water. Water belongs to the community, and no one is allowed to own it unless they have had to put in their labor and time to access it and distribute it. There's also a right to irrigation, shurb, that permits people to water their crops, but domestic use has precedence over agriculture or industrial use. Islamic principles have been both social and political power, and they can play a major role in helping to resolve water issues and increase awareness of water conservation. The principles are versatile and as such can be utilized across all aspects of environmental studies and especially water conservation and governance. Public awareness campaigns, when enriched with Islamic principles, can be a powerful tool to be employed along with other water conservation policies. Channels used for Islamic communication should be utilized more as a way to campaign for the conservation of water resources. More imams should be trained to pass on messages during the Friday khutbahs, the Friday prayers about water conservation. Wash issues, as I mentioned at the beginning, these are having a huge impact on communities, but communities also provide a way of addressing the issues. Raising awareness amongst communities can promote real change and real hope for the children and their families who are affected as a result of poor sanitation and hygiene. It's estimated that there's 5 billion people who are members of the religious communities. So, as I said earlier, we, the faith communities, cannot become complacent. It is a reality that the climate catastrophe is coming within a decade and water is becoming scarcer. This is why all the key global players are exploring ways of dealing with the ramifications of this scarcity. Nearly 800 million people still remain without access to clean drinking water, the majority of whom reside in regions experiencing severe water stress. Gender and wealth disparities continue to inhibit equitable access for certain populations. The leading cause of child mortality in the global south is still waterborne diseases. There are, post 2015 sustainability issues, leading up to 2030, issues in terms of water quantity, quality, surrounding the achievements. The parallel target on basic sanitation will not be met by 2026 at the current rate of change. And especially with COVID, I don't know what the situation is going to be. 70% of the world's blind are women who've been infected directly or through their children with trachoma, a blinding bacterial eye infection. So providing access to safe water and sanitation facilities and promoting proper hygiene behavior are important in reducing the burden of sanitation and hygiene related diseases. So hygiene—
Time to wrap up, please.
Okay, let me just come to the end then. So finally, waterborne diseases are spread through contaminated water. Worldwide, approximately 1 billion people are affected by one or more of the neglected tropical diseases. So I just want to conclude by, saying that on this panel, for instance, the faith communities, we have both the responsibility and we have the power to address the water conservation and the WASH issues. So faith leaders are the gatekeepers to vast networks and already have a ready audience. It's now our turn to be heard, and inshallah, we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Husna. I'm sorry that I had to rush you up because we probably are left with just about 15 minutes and some time for discussion and a speaker left. Obviously, the divine law in Islam is to also quench the thirst of the thirsty, and how water conservation is embedded in Quran, the holy scripture of Islam, and how wasting water or polluting is condemned in the scripture. These are some of the important tenets of Islam which go a long way in conserving and protecting waters. Thank you very much for highlighting them. Now we would move to the last speaker, and I hope we will have some time left for question and answer. And to get a Jewish perspective, we have Rabbi Abraham Sotendorp, who was born in the Netherlands in the middle of the Second World War and survived as a hidden child through the help of a righteous couple. He has been a human rights advocate, a lecturer, writer, and activist, and a civil society champion. He has been the founding member of the Green Cross International, Earth Charter Commissioner, and founding member of JIVA, that Sadviji is also representing here, the Global Interfaith WASH Alliance. So he's also engaged with the EcoPeace Middle East. So without further ado, over to you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much, Danish. What a richness are we sharing at this beautiful day. What a strength. Yes, water has been the sanctity and the source of life also from the beginning of creation, as Judaism has learned and shared. And even in the Middle Ages, Maimonides, one of the great teachers, has said that water, drinking water, should be accessible to everyone and never be a part of commodity. The lessons of the old have to be combined with this time. And I'm thinking of my brothers and sisters, all of you, who are now with me. And I'm thinking, Satvi, of standing in Rishikesh and dedicating toilets, one of the most impressive and religious experiences I've had. And I'm thinking of Husna and all your efforts and all together. And so I want to take shorter time to specify that we are in an extraordinary moment in the realization of what the illness that is in around the world has made us aware. There's one parable that I love and is shared by all spiritual traditions, that humanity is one body, and one part of the body aches, the rest of the body feels it. And if we know that 90% of our body is water, that it is the essence of life, and that now the whole world realizes that we need the cooperation, and we need God's presence and the presence of beauty and the presence of the eternity within us. And may we be moved not by fear because of the disasters that are impending on us, but the love of the children's children who will pay for our neglect. Let us do it, everything together, because of love. And so I would like all those precious details that you have brought together of actions to be brought to the fore, and that governments and nations will realize what we can do to improve. Let me just, as one of examples, speak about eco-peace and about Palestinians, Israelis, and Jordanians who have a beautiful plan to share water, to share these blessings of desalination, to share renewable energy across Jordan, Israel, Palestine, Gaza. It is possible. The cry out from our prayers is that the people who make policies will realize that this is the essence of the valued water that will bring us together. Isaiah and the prophet Amos have spoken of righteous streams that will cross. And yes, I say finally, Dennis, you spoke about the fact how I was saved. It is true. Only the reaching out of a hand has made it possible for me to be with you. All children, every creature on earth, the whole community of life is needing the reaching out of our hand. May God bless the work of our hands. May God give us the courage to go forward together.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. I always, I'm moved by how you were brought in, smuggled in order to protect you from those time and circumstances, and how you have dedicated your life and spirituality to now give back to the society, to the nation, but also more importantly to the nature and our planet. And the activist in you also emphasizes how we can, as a faith-based organization, can contribute and build pressure groups for the governments to be made accountable. Your works with eco-peace in Palestine, Israel, and Jordan is also very inspiring. We have been following that closely. And thank you for saving some time for some questions and answers. So friends, now we had expected a little longer time for question answers, but it's always not as possible when we have such distinguished panelists. We also want to listen to them. Now, there have been some questions from the chat, but if anybody would like to raise some concerns, because I saw the responses from the chat, questions have been also given. Rachel is keeping them well engaged, responding to some of the questions. From some of you, if you have already identified some questions from the chat, Rachel, maybe I would give you, if we can take just a minute to respond to some of the questions, that would be great. We can start with you, Rachel.
Which one do you want me to answer?
Was it to you something about privatization aspect? There was a question from
yeah, there was a question about what we can do about the Christian community. I think one of the challenges we have in the Christian community is this prosperity gospel that comes in that says that people want to have more and more. And we've begun to understand blessing as blessing means physical stuff. I was blessed by a new car. I was blessed by a TV screen. I was blessed by this. So we need to go back to really understanding what is the blessing. And blessing is actually the basic things of life. It is the healthy food. It is the good soil. It is the clean water. And to work so that everybody on the planet can have the same blessings. We cannot all have the fancy car, but we need to fight so that every single person can have access to clean water and safe sanitation. And I think one of the things as the Christian church we need to do is to share resources and prepare sermons, prepare prayers, prepare Bible studies where we can say there's so much in the Bible that talks about water injustice and the need for access to clean water. I don't think we really preach about it enough.
Thank you. Ankur, Reverend Ankur from India, you have written a question on water security. Would you like to raise that yourself? If you are still around.
Yes. Thank you, Dinesh, for this time. Unfortunately, I cannot come on the video.
No
thank you for this time. And indeed, it was like very good time listening to you all, and very much great content we have received. We could see that each and every religion at one point of time have recognized the water and its issues. Can we as religious leaders from all around the world, from all around the different multi-religious denominations or institutions, can we come up with something more practical? Can we come up with something more sacramental or something more related to teachings, our teachings, to make it more practical in each and every sections of churches, mosques, any teaching place, synagogue, or anything like that, temples, anywhere. So we can come up with something more, because people are faith people. We are all faith people. We are all faith communities, and it is very much needed for us to direct our lifestyles according to our faith or our religious beliefs. So if as a religion, religious leaders, if we can come up with something more practical, something more related to practical or something of water, about water and water security, it would be a wonderful. Can anybody respond to that?
Yeah, I think Husna made a mention about the potential of these 5 billion people who consider themselves belong to a faith community. Husna, maybe quickly, if you could briefly respond.
Thank you for that question. I think what was clear from all the interventions today, how everyone recognizes that water is not a commodity. So I think we can definitely work together. And Rabbi Sultan gave the example of the eco piece. That was a joint sort of initiative, and then GWA itself. It's an interfaith initiative. So you've got two examples in front of you right now. So we just need to build on these and learn from them and take the lessons and move forward. So maybe Dinesh, after this, one of the actions could be that we set up another, a project that we can all work with you on.
Thank you. Thank you. Since we have just about 5 minutes left, I want to also inform all of us that if you would have seen in the program, we were thinking about a joint action through a kind of a common understanding and agreement for action on valuing water in the current context, what we have just discussed. And the UN Special Rapporteur has been highly looking forward to such a statement. So I think we can definitely, if we all agree, we could have done an exercise now, but I think we don't have the time. But if you all agree, we will probably try to formulate a small task group, and those of who would be interested can sign up. We will share a kind of a shared document, and then collectively we can come up with this joint statement by faith communities on valuing water. I think that would go a long way. And today the World Water Development Report was also released and on valuing water, and the faith-based communities, we all had contributed. Most of you may have contributed, and I'm yet to get a copy of that. It was released only today by the UN. I hope they have done justice to our contributions, but it would be worthwhile to make such an attempt. Friends, now I would give you about 30 seconds each to each of the speakers. Your last word before we end this. We start, who is here now? I think some of the colleagues have left already, but with Rachel, we will go with you first.
I think the most important thing that we need to think about water is we shouldn't really refer to this planet as the Earth. We should actually refer to it as the water, because it is a blue planet because of the water. But so little of that water we can actually drink. And our responsibility is to be caretakers of the water for the generations to come. So yeah, that is what we have been called by God to do, is to care for this earth and the water on it, but also to remember that we must do that for the generations to come.
Thank you. Caretaker of the blue planet. Thank you very much, Rachel. Husna, your last word.
I love what Pedro said about the blue soul. So I think that's something that I'll take away from this meeting. I think, it's just about collaboration, holding hands, working together. I know we're not allowed to hold hands because of COVID, but, metaphorically, that's my last word. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rabbi, your wisdom.
Let us realize that we are approaching a holy decade. We have 10 years to make sure that water is accessible to everyone, and therefore much more cooperation, so that this richness of being together now will be able to be shared by all those billions of people. We can make that difference. And thank you, Danish, and the World Council of Churches, to creating this moment. May there be many more to follow.
Thank you, Rabbi. Definitely, inshallah. Sadhvi ji has left. Is Kiran still around? Now, I would then, if they're not there, Bishop Temple had to go for a press conference, then I would like to hear from at least two participants. Please volunteer yourself and speak for 1 minute each before we wrap this up. Anybody? Otherwise, we won't do justice to such a wonderful number of participants around here. What did you take away from this webinar today? Anyone? I think I would ask my good friend Reverend Vinod Victor to start the ball rolling.
Well, it was a very enriching experience to see how all faiths together look at how precious water is. And of course, I was particularly challenged when we told us that there are 722 verses about water, but seldom do we preach on water. That is my personal challenge that I take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we hear from a women participant also? Anyone?
I am Jabu Jai Singh from CS Ecumenical Diocese.
Okay, go ahead.
It's really an exposure in this evening with different faith perspectives regarding with water, the divinity of water. It's really a challenging one. And the PowerPoint which is presented, it's practically we can practice in the churches. It helped me a lot in my ministry to give importance and give orientation to the congregation members regarding with water and it's related with the divinity and regarding with the challenges present in the present context. Thank you, sir. It's really a nice one.
Thank you very much, Jabu Jai Singh. And we also have Luke Adrianos here giving us a comment in the chat. The declining of spirituality and environmental ethics caused natural resource degradation. Lucas, also part of our Season of Creation team. Thank you very much for that caution. I hope we will mend our ways. Friends, it's 4:30 already, and I think we cannot take your commitment to the time you had given for granted, and therefore we will not take it further longer. But these 1.5 hours have been very enriching. And as Vinod, my friend, has already pointed out how each of these different religions adhere so much of spiritual significance and ethical values attributed to water. I think the corporate sector, the United Nations, the governments, they all must know about this, because as Husna said, 5 billion people, or roughly about 80-85% of world's population, identifies with some faith communities, and faith has so much to contribute to the protection of water. So I think with that note, let us all be the protectors of the blue planet, because water is the blue soul of our planet, and faith has so much to talk about protecting our waters. We would like to thank each one of you, all the speakers, all the participants, and this has been recorded. We would try to carve out a brief report and share with some common understanding of a plan of action. First, to start with, would be a joint action for protecting water and attributing ethical and spiritual values to water. So with that note, on behalf of the World Council of Churches, and I was told by the UN Special Rapporteur to extend his heartfelt thanks for this. They are co-organizing this with us. We want to thank each one of you. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, good afternoon, or whatever time you are.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you.